The first thing I always notice is my tongue. It has become a strange thing, heavy, like a sheet of sandpaper pressed against the roof of my mouth. If I try to move it, it makes a dry, dull click that echoes in my inner ear. Thirst isn't just a desire. It is a presence. It has taken up residence in me, in every crack of my lips, in the thickness of the saliva that no longer flows, in the slow, painful throb in my temples. I have been here, I don't know, 2 days, or 3. Time in the countryside, when you're alone, becomes elastic. It stretches in the hours of motionless sun and shrinks in the blackness of night, when the silence is so absolute you can hear the buzz of your own blood, or the lack of it. I am in the kitchen, leaning on the cement sink. My vision blurs if I move too fast, so I do everything slowly, as if swimming in thick honey. I grab the faucet, that old metal faucet that always sweats rust. I turn it with all my strength, which isn't much. A gasp of air comes out, a pitiful groan, and then nothing. Dry. My son, Roberto, cut the water from the outside. So it doesn't get wasted, Mom, he told me last time, with that smile that never reaches his eyes. Now I know it was to make sure I had nowhere to go. Where would I go? The house is in the middle of nowhere. The dusty dirt road that leads to the main highway is 3 kilometers away. On foot, in this state, it would be my grave. I stare at the faucet, as if by sheer force of will I could make a drop appear. I remember the feeling of cold water running down my throat. It's a memory so vivid it hurts. I close my eyes and almost feel it, but when I open them, there's only the dry sink with a white stain of lime at the bottom. I have to think. Survival is that thinking one step ahead of fainting. I know there is some water, a little at the bottom of the old thermos I used to water the pot of basil. The basil has already died, wilted and black, but I didn't dare drink that water. It was like admitting that it was all over. But now the need is stronger than pride. I stagger to the corner where the thermos is. I grab it. I feel the weight of the liquid at the bottom. It's not much, but it's something. I unscrew the cap and a smell of metal and rotten herbs hits my nose. It doesn't matter. I bring the thermos to my lips and take a tiny sip. It's warm, it tastes like rust, but it's moisture. The sensation on my tongue is almost a miracle. An instant relief, so brief it vanishes in seconds, leaving an even more conscious thirst. I force myself to put the thermos away. It's my reserve, my little treasure of agony. The hunger is a duller discomfort, an emptiness twisting in my stomach. It hurts, but thirst is an emergency. You can ignore hunger for longer. I checked the pantry yesterday. Empty. Only an old package of noodles that looked so old and dusty I was afraid to eat it. Roberto took even the cans of tuna I kept for emergencies. He took everything, leaving me only with this thirst and this silence. I crawl to the armchair, the usual one, the one by the window overlooking the path. The fabric is worn and smells like me, like old age, like time standing still. I collapse into it. The dust dances in the sunbeams filtering through the blinds. I look out the window. The field stretches out, yellow from the summer sun. Not a soul in sight. Only the cracked earth and the sky, a mercilessly clear blue. The sound is that of flies. They buzz with an energy that feels like an insult. Where do they get so much life? I think about Roberto, about my son, the boy I carried in my arms, the one I sang to sleep, the one I cured of scraped knees with a kiss. Where did that boy go? His face has become blurry to me, like an old photo exposed to the sun. I only remember his eyes clearly lately. Cold, calculating, always looking for what he could take. The television, the good china that was my mother's, my husband's tools, even my wedding ring. I need it, Mom. It's for a business. And I, like a fool, gave it to him. Because he is my son. Because after his father left, he was all I had left. Now all I have is this house. This house that was my home, and is now my prison. It creaks with every wind. At night, the noises keep me awake. I think they are footsteps, that he has returned, that maybe he regretted it, but they are just old timbers groaning. Sometimes I talk to myself. I ask my husband's ghost, "Where did we go wrong, Antonio?" The silence answers me. The hours pass like this. I doze off, I don't know if for minutes or an hour. I dream of rivers, of fountains, of rain falling on my face. I wake up with a start, my lips drier than before, my heart racing. The desperation begins to climb my spine, a coldness that has nothing to do with the temperature. This can't be. It can't be that my own son left me here to die. What did I do to him? What horrible crime did I commit to deserve this? Love him too much? Allow him everything? And then? I hear it. Far away, at first it's just a vibration, a dull rumble that grows. It's not just any car. It's the rough, irregular engine of Roberto's van. I recognize it like I would recognize his voice. A shiver runs through my body, but not of relief. No, it's a sharp, visceral fear. My heart, which was beating so slowly, begins to hammer in my chest, so hard I feel it will break my ribs. My mouth, dry as it is, fills with a bitter taste. It's getting closer. The noise gets louder, until I feel it rumbling in the window panes. It appears on the path, raising a cloud of white dust that sticks to the dirty metal of the bodywork. It stops in front of the house, with that screech of brakes it always had. My whole body tenses. I grip the arms of the chair, my knuckles white from the force. The van door opens, and he gets out. I see him. He's dressed as always, jeans and a wrinkled shirt. He's a big man, like his father was. He has the same square jaw, but in his eyes there is none of Antonio's kindness. He walks to the front door without hurry. He doesn't look towards the window. He knows I'm here. He knows what he's done. I hear his footsteps on the wooden steps, creaks that drill into my brain. The front door, which I didn't lock, because why would I, since I have nowhere to run, opens. And there he is in the doorway. He fills the entrance. He smells of tobacco and road dust. His shadow falls over me. He pauses, looking at me. His eyes scan me from head to toe, mercilessly. I try to maintain my composure, try not to let him see the panic, the weakness, but my hands are shaking. I can't help it. "Hello, Mom," he says. His voice is deep, flat. There is no affection, no concern, not even guilt. I open my mouth to answer, but only a hoarse sound, a whisper, comes out. I have to wet my lips with my tongue, that rag of a tongue, to form a word. "Roberto," I manage to say. It's barely a thread of voice. He takes a step inside. His gaze takes a quick look at the kitchen, at the open and empty pantry. A corner of his mouth lifts in what could be a smile or a grimace of contempt. "You look well," he comments, and the irony is so cruel I want to scream. "What? What do you want?" I ask, clinging to the arm of the chair so he won't see me tremble. He shrugs, as if it were a stupid question. He comes a little closer, and I instinctively shrink back in the seat. "I came for what's mine, Mom. It's the end of the month. The pension." There it is, the word. The reason for all this, the money I give him every month since Antonio died, to help him with his businesses that never work, money that vanishes and that now, clearly, is worth more than my life. He stares at me, waiting. He knows I don't have the strength for an argument. He knows he has me beaten. But what he doesn't know, what he can't even imagine, is that these 2 days of thirst and hunger and absolute loneliness have burned away all fear, all submission from me. They have uncovered something hard and cold, like a stone at the bottom of a dry well. I am no longer just the mother who forgives everything. I am a woman who has looked death in the eye and has nothing left to lose. And he didn't expect me to do this. With a superhuman effort, slowly, I rise from the armchair. My legs buckle, but I lean against the wall. I stand on my feet, looking him in the eye. There is no pleading in my gaze anymore. There is something else, something he has never seen in me before. "The pension," I say, and my voice, although weak, no longer trembles. It sounds strangely calm. He nods, with an expression of impatience. He pulls his father's old wallet from his back pocket. "Yeah, Mom, the money. Hurry up. I have things to do." I don't move. I stare at him. Every second of agony, every dry mouthful, every hunger pang, every tear I couldn't cry because my body had no fluid to form it, is present in this moment. "No," I say. It's a simple, short word, but it falls into the room like a slab. Roberto blinks. He stands still. He doesn't understand. or he doesn't want to understand. What? He asks, frowning. I said no. I repeat, and now my voice gains a little strength. There is no money for you. Not today, not any other day. His expression changes. Impatience turns to disbelief and then, quickly, to anger. His jaw tightens. He takes a step towards me, and his size seems to grow, filling the small living room. Don't waste my time, Mom, he says, and his voice is a low growl. Give me the money. I know you have it. I did, I say, holding his gaze. But not anymore. I kept it in the cookie tin, in the kitchen cupboard. Remember it? The same one where you kept your candies when you were little. He looks instinctively towards the kitchen. I know he's calculating whether to push me aside and go look for it himself. But 2 days ago, I continue, and I feel my heart beating with a silent fury. After you left me here, without water, without food, I sat in this chair, and I thought, a lot. And I decided that if that money was the only thing I had left to live for, I'd rather not have it. His face flushes. What are you saying? What you hear, Roberto. The money is gone. It disappeared. I made it disappear. He stands frozen, looking at me as if I had grown another head. Anger and confusion battle in his features. He can't process it. His plan was foolproof. Leave me without resources, weakened so that when he came, I, frightened and submissive, would give him the money without a fuss. But he didn't count on this. He didn't count on absolute desperation generating such cold resistance. Are you lying? He snarls, taking another step. He's now barely a meter away from me. I can smell his breath, of cheap coffee. Tell me you're lying, you crazy old woman. I'm not lying, I whisper, and for the first time in the conversation, a sad, bitter smile forms on my cracked lips. I swear on your father's memory that I am not lying. The money is gone. You lost it, like you lost everything else. His hand rises, an instinctive gesture, a reflex from a lifetime of getting what he wants through intimidation. I don't flinch. I don't blink. I look him straight in the eye, defiant. For the first time, I give him back his own coldness. And at that instant, just as his arm is about to descend, the phone rings. It's a strident, ancient sound from the landline phone I have on the small table next to the armchair. A beige apparatus. With a dial older than him, it rings with an insistence that cuts the tension like a knife. We both startle. It's a sound from the outside world, a world I've been disconnected from for 2 days. Roberto lowers his hand, bewildered. His gaze shifts to the ringing phone and back to me. Who? He begins to say, but falls silent. No one calls me. No one for years except him. Friends drifted away, family scattered. This phone is an ornament, a relic of another era. It keeps ringing, a sharp, demanding ringtone. I, with a calm I don't even understand, slowly turn and pick up the receiver. I bring it to my ear. Hello? I manage to say, my voice still hoarse. On the other end, there is a silence for a second, and then a voice. A woman's voice, sweet, with a hint of worry that sounds so strange and distant in this house of horror, that for a moment I think I'm hallucinating. Clara? Clara? Is that you? Says the voice. I lose my breath. I recognize that voice. It's Elena, my sister. The sister I haven't heard from in over 10 years, since a silly, proud fight over a family inheritance. The sister who lives hundreds of kilometers away. Elena? I whisper, and the name comes out laden with an emotion I thought was dead. Roberto stares at me, his eyes narrowed. He knows something is happening, something that wasn't in his script. Clara. My God, your voice! Are you all right? Elena says, and her tone is genuinely alarmed. I dreamed about you last night. A horrible dream, that you were in trouble. I couldn't get the thought out of my head. I had to look for your number in Mom's old address book. What's wrong? I look at Roberto. I look him in the eye as I speak to my sister, to the voice that bursts in like a ray of light into this darkness, and the words come out on their own, clear, sharp, loaded with the full weight of the truth. Elena. I say, without taking my eyes off my son. Elena. Don't hang up, please. Roberto is here, and he's starving me and leaving me to die of thirst. Roberto's face completely disintegrates. The color drains from it, leaving a rictus of pure horror. His eyes widen like saucers, not because of the accusation, but because someone else knows that the outside world from which he had completely isolated me has burst into his secret. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. From the other end of the line, Elena's scream is muffled, heart-wrenching. "What?" "Clara, call the police. Now." "I can't," I reply, with a deadly serenity. He cut the phone line. He cut the water. I have no way to leave. And then I hang up. The click of the receiver as it rests in its cradle sounds like the slam of a judgment. The silence that follows is more deafening than any scream. Roberto and I look at each other. There is no more room for lies, for excuses. The thin veil of normality he was trying to maintain has been completely torn. His secret is no longer a secret. Someone knows. He takes a step back, staggering, as if he had been hit. His gaze sweeps the room, no longer with anger, but with growing panic. I am no longer just his mother, a helpless old woman he can intimidate. I am a witness who has just sounded the alarm. "What have you done?" he manages to say, with a broken voice I hadn't heard in years. "What the hell have you done, Mom?" I lean against the wall, feeling my strength beginning to leave me, but with a strange fire burning in my chest. The game has changed. It's no longer just about the money. "What I had to do," I reply, not taking my eyes off his. "Survive." And at that moment, outside, very far away, but getting closer and closer, another sound begins to be heard. A sound different from the van's. It is the sharp, insistent wail of a siren. Roberto pales even more. His gaze goes to the window, to the path he came from. The sound of the siren grows, mixing with the buzz of the flies and the violent beating of our hearts. He looks at me again, and for a fleeting instant, I see something in his eyes that I haven't seen since he was a child. The pure and genuine fear. And I know, with a certainty that freezes my blood, that this is not over, that the danger has just begun. The siren wasn't just one. I could distinguish it now. It was the high-pitched wail of a patrol car, mixed with the deeper, more urgent tone of an ambulance. They sounded like enraged beasts approaching on the dirt road, and every time they rose, Roberto's face contorted as if he were being electrocuted. The sound filled the room, pressing the two of us into the corners of our own nightmare. I, leaning against the wall, felt the vibrations in my back. He, standing in the center of the room, looked like a cornered animal, his eyes jumping from me to the window, to the door, calculating an impossible escape. The dust raised by his van still floated in the air, trapping the sunbeams like fool's gold. "What did you do?" he repeated. But this time it wasn't a question, it was a hoarse roar that barely overcame the din of the sirens. His fist clenched around his father's wallet, squeezing it until his knuckles turned white. I didn't answer. I had no energy to shout. I could only watch the hunter become the prey. The blood pounded in my ears, a frantic drumming, mixing with the external chaos. Had Elena called the police? So fast, she must live nearby. Or my voice, that thread of a dying voice, had sounded so terrible she didn't hesitate for a second. The sirens stopped abruptly, right outside. The silence they left was even more terrifying. Only the pathetic hum of the ambulance engine, and the crunch of gravel under boots. Roberto froze. His breathing was a shallow pant, like a scared dog's. He looked at me, and in his eyes there was no longer anger, but pure panic, the panic of a child who has broken something priceless and knows punishment is imminent. "Mom," he said, and the word sounded strange, stripped of all its usual hardness. It was almost a plea. The front door, which he had left ajar, was pushed wide open. The blinding midday light outlined the figure of a tall man in uniform. Behind him, the red and blue flash of lights painted the road dust with emergency colors. "Señora Clara Ortiz?" asked the policeman, a young voice, firm but with contained tension. His gaze scanned the room, passing over Roberto, who seemed to want to merge with the floor, and fixed on me. On my emaciated figure, clinging to the wall to avoid falling. I nodded, a minimal movement that made me dizzy. The world began to tilt, the colors to blur. "My God," I heard another voice say. Female and a woman in a paramedic's uniform stepped past the policeman. Her eyes, full of professionalism and piercing compassion, scanned me from head to toe. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" I tried to say yes, but only a groan came out. My legs gave way. I couldn't take it anymore. The adrenaline that had sustained me during the confrontation with Roberto vanished, leaving me like an empty rag doll. It was foreign hands, strong and careful, that prevented me from hitting the floor. The paramedic and her partner, a younger man, held me gently. "Easy, ma'am. You're safe. We're going to help you," the woman murmured, as she felt for my pulse on my wrist. Her fingers were cool. Her touch, human. It was the first kind touch I had felt in days, and I almost burst into tears, but I didn't even have tears. "Severe dehydration," she said to the other paramedic, and her voice sounded grave. "We need an IV now." Between the two of them, they carefully led me to the armchair. I closed my eyes, defeated. I heard voices, quick movements, the rustle of a medical bag opening, the click of a vial. "Hey, you!" I heard the policeman's voice, now hard, directed at Roberto. "Roberto Ortiz." "He's my son," I muttered, without opening my eyes. I don't know why I said it. Maybe from a remnant of maternal instinct, from the habit of protecting him, even from himself. "Sir, stay where you are," ordered the policeman. I heard footsteps, the crunch of boots on the floorboards. I opened my eyes a little. I saw the policeman, a boy no more than 30 years old, standing in front of Roberto, who seemed to have shrunk a size. The officer didn't draw his weapon, but his posture was one of maximum alert. "My mother is confused," Roberto stammered. His voice sounded weak, ridiculous. The lie crumbled before it left his lips. "She forgets things. She's losing her mind." The paramedic, who was cleaning my arm with a cold gauze, looked up at him. Her gaze wasn't hateful, but one of deep, devastating pity. "Sir," she said calmly, but with an authority that silenced the room, "your mother shows clear signs of dehydration and malnutrition. She has been like this for at least 48 hours. It's not confusion, it's survival." The blow of that word, survival, resonated in the air. Roberto lowered his head. He said nothing more. I felt a sharp prick in my arm, but then a feeling of cool relief began to spread through my veins. It was the saline solution. Life entering drop by drop into my exhausted body. "Clara. Clara, dear." This voice I recognized instantly. It was older, more tired than in my memory, but it was hers. Elena. She made her way through the uniforms, her face pale, marked by recent tears. She wore a simple dress, and her hands were shaking. When she saw me, she brought one of those hands to her mouth, stifling a moan. "My God, sister," she whispered, falling to her knees beside the armchair. She took my hand, the one without the IV, and squeezed it between hers. Her hands were warm, alive. Forgive me for not coming sooner. For that stupid fight." I shook my head, squeezing her hand with what little strength I had left. I couldn't speak. The lump in my throat was too big. 10 years of silence, of pride, dissolving in a second before the evidence that in the end, blood still mattered. She had come. She had felt my pain from kilometers away. "The lady needs immediate transport to the hospital," said the paramedic, interrupting the moment. "We need to stabilize her." Elena nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I'm going with her." As they prepared the stretcher, the other policeman, who had been checking the house, came out of the kitchen. He had the empty thermos in his hand. "There's no water, boss. The main faucet is cut off from outside. There's no food. Just this," he said, showing the thermos. The lead officer looked at Roberto with an expression that was no longer just professional. It was one of deep, visceral disgust. "Roberto Ortiz, you have the right to remain silent," he began to say, reciting his rights in a voice icy with contempt. "He is my son," I shouted. Or at least I tried to. A weak croak came out. Everyone looked at me. Roberto looked up, and for a second, our eyes met. In his there was no longer fear or anger. There was something empty, broken, as if, upon being discovered, he had completely deflated. "Mom," he murmured, and this time it was just a sound of defeat. The paramedics placed me on the stretcher and began to carry me out of the house. As I passed through the door, the sun hit my face, blinding. I turned my head towards the house, towards the figure of my son, who now had his hands cuffed behind his back. The policeman guided him firmly, but without brutality, towards the patrol car. Roberto didn't resist. He walked with his head down, like a sleepwalker. Before they put him in the car, he stopped and looked at me. The distance between us was only 10 meters, but it seemed like an abyss. His gaze was inscrutable. Was it remorse, hatred, or simply the emptiness of someone who has hit rock bottom? Elena, walking beside my stretcher, squeezed my hand. "Don't look at him, Clara. Don't give him any more of your energy." But I couldn't look away. He was my son, the boy I rocked to sleep, and I saw him being put into the police car, like a criminal. When they closed the ambulance doors, the outside world faded. The interior was cool, clean, full of softly beeping machines. The paramedic adjusted my blanket. "Everything is going to be all right, Señora Ortiz. You are safe." Elena sat beside me, holding my hand, not letting go. The ambulance started, and the movement rocked me gently. Through the rear window, I saw my house disappear, small and dilapidated, amidst the yellow field. The patrol car followed, carrying inside all I had left of family. I closed my eyes, exhausted. The tension of the last few days, the confrontation, the arrival of help, everything accumulated, and I sank into an immediate, deep sleep. But it wasn't a peaceful sleep. It was full of memories. I dreamed of Roberto at 7 years old, running through the same field that was now my prison. He was flying a kite his father had made for him, a red cloth one that soared against the blue sky. His laughter was the purest sound I had ever heard. He turned and shouted to me, "Look, Mom, look, it flies so high," and I smiled, my heart filled with a love so great I thought my chest would explode. When did the kite break? When did he stop looking at the sky and start digging in the dirt, searching for something he never found? The jolting of the ambulance on the highway asphalt woke me. I opened my eyes. Elena was there, looking at me with infinite tenderness. "How are you, sister?" she asked, her voice a balm. "Thirsty," I replied, and this time my voice sounded a bit clearer. She took a bottle of water from the paramedic and brought the straw to my lips. The first sip of fresh, clean water was a revelation, a miracle. I felt it run down my dry throat, hydrating every cell in my body. It was better than any delicacy. "Thank you, Elena," I whispered, when she moved the bottle away. For calling." "I dreamed you were drowning, Clara," she said, and her eyes filled with tears again. "I dreamed you were in a dry well calling me." I woke up with my heart racing. It wasn't a coincidence, it was something more. I nodded. Perhaps the bonds of blood, when they are true, have a connection that transcends distance and resentment. "What will happen to him?" I asked, unable to help it. Elena's face hardened a little. "With Roberto, Clara, please, what he did to you. It's unspeakable. What will happen is that justice will run its course." "He is my son," I repeated, like a worn-out mantra, the only truth I had left. "And you are his mother," she replied firmly. "And you deserve to live with dignity, not dying of thirst in that cursed house." I looked out the window. The fields gave way to the first houses of the town, normal life. People walking, parked cars. It was a world I had felt disconnected from for years. We arrived at the hospital, a coming and going of bright lights, calm voices, and the smell of disinfectant. They moved me to a room, connected me to more machines. The doctors examined me, spoke to me kindly. It was strange, being the center of so much attention after so much loneliness. Elena didn't leave my side. She made calls, spoke with the police officers who came to take my statement. I, exhausted, let the words come out, empty of emotion, as if I were telling someone else's story. He left me without water, cut the faucet, took the food, came for the pension. Every word I uttered was a nail in the coffin of my son's life. And yet, a part of me felt like a traitor. In the evening, now stabilized, with the saline hydrating me and a light soup in my stomach, I was left alone with Elena. The lights in the room were low. The world outside was quiet. "Clara," Elena said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but laden with something important. "There's something you need to know." I turned to her in the bed. Her expression was serious, worried. What is it? When I called the police, I also called someone else. Someone who, I thought, should know. A stab of anxiety went through my stomach. Who? Elena took a deep breath. Gabriel. The name fell into the room like a bomb. Gabriel, my other son. The younger one. The one who left home 15 years ago after a fierce fight with Roberto, a fight that started over money and ended with blows and words that could never be taken back. Gabriel left that same night, swearing never to return as long as Roberto was around, and he kept his word. He hadn't returned. He hadn't called. For me, it was as if he had died. Gabriel? I stammered, feeling my heart race again in my chest. Did you tell him? I told him everything, Clara, said Elena, taking my hand. I couldn't help it. He's your son. He has a right to know. And what did he say? I asked, in a threat of voice. The idea of Gabriel knowing about me under these circumstances, after so long, was heartbreaking. Elena looked at me, and her eyes held a mixture of sadness and something that seemed like hope. He didn't say much. He was silent for a long time. On the other end of the phone, I could only hear his breathing. Then he said, "Tell my mother I'm on my way." The air escaped my lungs. Gabriel coming here? But he lives 1,000 kilometers away, I muttered, confused. He does. Elena nodded. He took the first flight. He arrives tomorrow morning. I closed my eyes. The news was as overwhelming as the thirst, the hunger, Roberto's betrayal, Gabriel, my youngest son, the one with the easy smile and the sad eyes. He was coming. He was going to see me in a hospital, shattered by his brother's actions. The tension that had eased with medical care tightened my chest again. It wasn't the physical fear of before. It was a much more complex and painful emotional knot. Gabriel's arrival meant facing the past. It meant reliving the fracture of our family. It meant the nightmare hadn't ended with the ambulance siren. It had only changed venues. "My God," I whispered, squeezing Elena's hand. "I know, sister," she said, understanding in her voice. "But maybe this is a new beginning. After the storm, calm always comes." But I wasn't sure. Looking out the hospital room window into the dark night, I only felt that another, even bigger storm was brewing. And at its center, waiting for me, was the face of my lost son, and the question that pierced my soul: would he see me as his mother, or as the silent accomplice of the brother who drove him away? The chapter closed with me staring at the door of the hospital room, wondering not what Gabriel would say to me, but if I could bear the look in his eyes after all these years. The tension was no longer about physical survival, but about the heart's redemption, and that perhaps was even more terrifying. The night in the hospital was long. Despite the exhaustion that weighed on my bones like lead, deep sleep refused to come. I dozed in brief intervals, startled by nightmares where the faucet was still dry, and Roberto's figure kept appearing at the door, asking for money with a voice that turned into the wail of the siren. Then I would wake up with a start, my heart galloping, confused by the sterile whiteness of the room, the soft beep of the heart monitor, and the smell of disinfectant that had replaced the dust and despair of the house. Every time I opened my eyes, Elena was there. Sometimes she dozed in an uncomfortable plastic armchair next to my bed, her head resting against the wall, her face marked by a worry that added years. Other times, she watched me, and when she saw my eyes were open, she smiled at me with a tenderness that broke my heart. "Do you need anything, Clara? Water?" she would ask in a whisper, reaching for the pitcher of fresh water on the bedside table. I drank small sips. Water was no longer a miracle, but a recovered right, yet every sip reminded me of the past thirst, and with it, the reason I was there. The image of Roberto being handcuffed cut through my mind like a knife. It wasn't hatred I felt, but a sorrow so immense and deep it left me breathless. When did my son, the boy who played ball in the yard, become the man capable of condemning his mother to a slow, miserable death? The question echoed in my head, over and over, without an answer. A nurse came in silently at dawn, to check my vital signs. He was a young man with soft hands. "Good, Senora Ortiz. The hydration is responding well," he said with a professional smile. "How do you feel?" "Tired," I replied. And it was the most absolute truth, a tiredness that was not only of the body, but of the soul. "That's normal. Your body has been through severe trauma. Rest. It's the best thing you can do. Rest? How was I supposed to rest when my world had shattered and my other son, whom I hadn't seen in 15 years, was on his way? The news of Gabriel's arrival was like a second siren, an internal alarm that wouldn't cease. What would I say to him? How would I look him in the eye? The last time I saw him, it was an afternoon of shouts and tears. Roberto, always bigger, more impulsive, had pushed him against the wall during an argument over some insignificant uncle's inheritance. Gabriel, with a split lip, had looked at me, pleading for an intervention that didn't come, or that came too late and too weak. "Stop it, both of you." I had shouted, but my voice sounded hollow, unable to stop the tide of resentment that had been growing between them for years. Gabriel, with tears of rage and pain in his eyes, had said to me, "You always defend him. You never see me." That night, he left with a backpack, and he never returned. I had tried to call him, write to him, but the letters came back unopened. Over time, the distance became a wall too high to climb, and now the wall was collapsing in the most brutal way possible. Elena, seeing the anxiety on my face, tried to distract me. "Remember, Clara, when we were girls and we used to run away to swim in the creek behind our grandparents' house?" she began to say, her voice taking on a nostalgic tone. I remembered the cool water, the sun on our skin, the laughter, a time of innocence that now seemed to belong to another life, to another person. I nodded weakly, letting her voice rock me, but my mind was elsewhere. At the bus terminal, or the airport, imagining Gabriel getting out of a vehicle, his face marked by time and distance. "He loves you, Clara," Elena said, as if reading my thoughts, in his own way. "He always loved you. The grudge was against Roberto, not against you." "I abandoned him," I whispered, and the guilt, old and familiar, coiled in my stomach. When he needed me most, I didn't know how to protect him. I let things go so far. "You were a woman alone, raising two sons with difficult personalities," Elena said firmly. "Don't blame yourself. Roberto was always complicated, since he was little, jealous, possessive. I knew. I had seen it, but as a mother, I had always tried to balance the scales, sometimes forcing a peace that wasn't real. And in the end, that balance broke, taking Gabriel away on one side and turning Roberto into what he was now. The morning hours passed with exasperating slowness. The rounds doctor came, examined me, said I was stable but needed rest and a nutritional assessment. He talked about serious negligence and long-term consequences. His words were technical, cold, but they described the horror I had lived through. A social worker came to talk to me, in a soft voice, asking about my support network. I pointed to Elena. She nodded, taking notes. The whole process made me feel like a case, a file, not like Clara Ortiz, the woman who had raised a family in that now cursed house. And then, around 11 in the morning, the moment arrived. I was staring at the door, as I had unconsciously done since I woke up. When it opened, it wasn't a nurse, it wasn't the doctor. It was Gabriel. He stopped in the doorway, as if the space were sacred or dangerous. He was wearing jeans and a simple jacket, with a backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked older, of course. The thin young man of 20 had become a man of 35, with some gray at his temples and lines of expression around his eyes. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart. The same dark, deep eyes he always had. In them there was no immediate anger, no reproach. There was infinite caution, a sadness that seemed to have taken root, and a glimmer of something that could be apprehension. Elena stood up immediately, with a tense smile. "Gabriel," she said, going to him and hugging him briefly. "Thank you for coming." He returned the hug awkwardly, but his gaze never left me. It was as if he were assessing the damage, trying to reconcile the image of the mother he remembered with the emaciated woman lying in the hospital bed, connected to an IV. "Hello, Mom," he said finally. His voice was deeper than I remembered, with a hoarseness it didn't have before. It sounded tired, from the journey, but also from life. "Hello, son," I managed to say. The words caught in my throat. I wanted to say 1,000 things. I wanted to ask for his forgiveness. I wanted to ask him about his life. I wanted to explain, but I could only look at him, feeling the years of separation compress into the space between the door and my bed. Elena, sensing the intensity of the moment, made a discreet move towards the door. "I'm going to get coffee for everyone," she said, and left, leaving us alone. The silence that remained was thick, charged with everything left unsaid. Gabriel took a couple of slow steps towards the bed. He stopped a meter away, not sitting down. His hands were in his pants pockets. "How are you?" he asked. It was a formal, almost polite question, but in his eyes there was a genuine concern that reached my soul. "Better," I replied, adjusting the sheet with trembling hands. "Better now that you're here." He nodded slowly, looking around at the IV, the machines. His jaw tightened. "Elena told me the basics," he said, and his voice trembled slightly on the word basics. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he was capable of this. "Neither could I whispered, and a tear, the first real tear I could form, rolled down my cheek. "Gabriel, Why, Mom?" he interrupted, and for the first time, raw emotion broke the surface of his caution. His voice cracked. "Why did you allow it for so long? Why did you always give him everything? And me?" He couldn't finish the sentence. He lowered his head, taking a deep breath, fighting to compose himself. The pain of that 20-year-old was there, intact, alive. "It wasn't like that, Gabriel," I said with desperation. "It was never like that. I loved you both equally. But Roberto always needed more. He was more fragile, in a strange way. And I, fool that I am, thought that giving him more love, more attention, more things, would fix him. And in the process, I neglected you. You became strong on your own, and I, instead of admiring you for it, took you for granted. It was unfair. It was a terrible mistake. And I am sorry. Not for what happened a few days ago, but for what happened all the years before, for not being the mother you needed." The words came out in a rush, like a torrent that had been dammed up for too long. When I finished, I was trembling. Gabriel didn't move. He stared at me, and his face was an impenetrable mask. The seconds passed, heavy as lead. Finally, he looked down. He fiddled with the edge of the table. "He always knew how to manipulate you," he said, in a low tone, not without bitterness. "Since he was little, a tantrum, a well-timed tear, and you gave in. I never knew how to do that. I never wanted to." "I know," I whispered, "and that's why I lost you, because you were the strong one, and the strong are punished for being strong." He looked up. There was a crack in his armor, a deep sadness. "You didn't lose me," he said, correcting me. "I walked away because I couldn't stand to see it. I couldn't stand to see him consuming you, emptying the house, emptying your life, and you allowed it. That's what hurt me the most. That you allowed it." It was the truth, the most painful truth of all. I had been an accomplice in my own destruction, and his. "Not anymore," I said, with all the strength I could put into my voice. "I don't allow it anymore. What has happened has been horrible, but it has opened my eyes. It has shown me that the well had no bottom, and that I was drowning in it." Gabriel nodded slowly. There was no hug. There was no hog. There was no hog. There was no hog. There was no hog. That it became a little thinner, a little more translucent. "This morning," he said, changing the subject, as if the intensity of the conversation had exhausted him. "Before going to the hospital, I spoke with the lawyer." The mention startled me. "Lawyer?" "For Roberto's situation," he clarified. Coldly, "he has to face charges. Neglect, abuse, whatever it may be. He can't get away with it." I knew it was logical. But the maternal instinct, that tenacious monster, twisted inside me. "Gabriel, is it necessary?" He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something resembling compassion in his eyes. "Yes, Mom, it is necessary for you, so that you know once and for all that what he did is wrong, that it has consequences. So that you can be truly free." The word free resonated in me. Could I ever be free from guilt, from fear, from toxic loyalty? "I'm scared," I admitted, in a whisper. "Me too," he confessed, surprising me. "I'm scared that all of this is a mistake, that we can't fix this. But we're trying. That's something, isn't it?" I nodded. Yes, it was something. It was all we had. Later, when I lay down on the sofa bed, wrapped in blankets that smelled of neutral fabric softener, I listened to the sounds of the city. They no longer seemed threatening. They were the sound of a life moving forward, indifferent to my drama. Gabriel was in his room. I could hear the faint tapping of his computer keyboard. I was in the well. Yes, but the well was no longer dry. Gabriel had thrown down a bucket, a small bucket of cold, unpromising metal, but as he lowered it, he had found something. It wasn't clear, fresh water. It was thick mud, made of painful truths and incomplete forgiveness. But it was moisture. It was a beginning. And for the first time in many, many years, as I closed my eyes and listened to my son's breathing on the other side of the wall, I knew that, against all odds, there was a possibility, as fragile as a silk thread, that something new could grow at the bottom of that dry well. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be fast. But the seed was planted, and that in itself was a miracle as great as the first sip of water after 2 days of thirst. The ending was not happy. It was real. And in its reality, in its painful honesty, lay a hope truer than any forced happy ending. The story of Clara and her sons was not over. It had simply taken a brutal, heart-wrenching turn towards a new, uncertain, but living chapter.